Here's a question that the specialists all over the world have been discussing for decades, and still the answers are not quite clear. We need to specify which phase of the IVF, the in vitro fertilization process, we're talking about. Before the oocyte pickup and before the fertilization of the eggs, the progesterone level needs to be low, and there are actually studies that suggest that if the progesterone level is, say, higher than 1 nanogram per milliliter or 1.5 nanogram per milliliter, that a transfer should not be performed in this cycle. The eggs will be collected, they will be fertilized, the embryos cultivated, but cryopreserved and saved for a later transfer when the conditions are indeed perfect. So the increased level of progesterone should not be premature. But mainly, we're aiming this question at the phase after the oocyte pickup or the ovulation, which is actually represented by this step, okay, by the collection of the eggs. And the eggs are fertilized at the same day, then usually cultivated for 5 days, and then a transfer is performed. So the progesterone needs to work with the endometrium. It needs to have an influence on it, usually for 5 days, but even this may be individual from patient to patient. Now, finally, what is possibly the perfect or a good or sufficient progesterone level for the transfer and for the implantation of the embryo? It's not an easy question because the progesterone levels, they probably oscillate. The progesterone is produced in phases during the day, so the level might actually be changing during the day. Also, there are some different forms of progesterone. Not all of them can be analyzed and detected easily. However, there have been some very interesting studies from Spain published earlier this year. Bosch, Labarta are the main authors, and they have shown actually some very interesting data where the cutoff of the progesterone on the day of embryo transfer was 8.8 nanograms per milliliter in one study, 9.2 in another study. So from that we can possibly extrapolate that anything over 10 nanograms per milliliter should be perfectly all right for the transfer and the implantation of the embryo.